They set up their own judicial system. They set up their own rulemaking. They set up, whatever their social services are going to be. And the only thing is you can't disagree with them or they'll kill you, as we have seen. And sometimes they kill you. They will allow, just as the Ottomans did in the Caliphate times, they'll allow a Christian or a Jew to live if they agree to pay a fine.
Well, that sounds like what Obama does. Obama permits Christians and Jews to live if we continue to pay the fine called exorbitant taxes. This is the most shameful generation of politicians America has ever had to live through. Obama won't call the 1915 Armenian massacre a genocide, again placating the murderous Muslims who are now dominating the West. Bill Clinton calls ISIS the most interesting NGO today. Meanwhile, a brave man wrote a letter to Obama, a Democrat, a liberal, and a Hispanic at that. His name is Ray Flores. I'll read you his letter. Dear Mr. President, he writes, a decade ago, I met you when I was a writer for the Chicago Tribune's Spanish-language news daily Hoy, as well as a communications specialist with the Service Employees International Union, Local 1 in Chicago. He goes on, and he said, little did I imagine that one day I would be writing an open letter to you, a man who had actually given me a recommendation for my job with the union, about your deafening silence as Christians are systematically executed by ISIS forces that some say your administration has helped fund and support. Why, Mr. President, he writes, do you stand in silence and apathy as the horrifying news reports continue to make their way to us from independent news sources on almost a daily basis? In Syria, Egypt, and Ethiopia, the pillaging of entire villages and schools has taken place, and there's not a peep from you. Entire schools of children are being set on fire. Women are being gang raped, and men are beheaded in front of video cameras for all the world to see. ISIS terrorists are mocking and laughing at us as they slaughter our Christian brothers and sisters of all ages. Are you telling me that somehow you aren't getting the same message we're getting, Mr. President? In Australia, several Catholic churches were torched and burnt to the ground. Had they been mosques, I have a feeling that there would have been some kind of official condemnation from the White House. When, Mr. President, will you come out and denounce these acts of terrorism and provide the necessary military aid to stop this genocide against Christians? In future generations, this will be seen as our generation's Holocaust. And people will ask, what did President Obama do? It will be sad to say that the answer will be a resounding nothing. That is from Ray Flores, a gentleman member of the Service Employees International Union in Chicago, and a lifetime Democrat who has more guts than the entire Republican Party put together. But if you think that you have hope with Jeb Bush, you're mistaken. In the following soundbite, you will hear Jeb Bush saying that the NSA spying is a good thing. Listen to clip 3.
I would say the best part of the Obama administration would be his continuance of the protections of the homeland using, the big metadata programs, the NSA being enhanced, advancing this, even though he never defends it, even though he never openly admits it, there has been a continuation of a very important service, which is the first obligation, I think, of our national government is to keep us safe.
This is Jeb Bush calling for the spying on all Americans to keep us safe. It doesn't get any worse than this, does it? Yes, it does. It gets much worse than this. If you're foolish enough to take the bait and vote for this imposter, who, by the way, I called Barack Bush yesterday, then you don't deserve a nation. How do you feel about Jeb Bush saying that the best thing Obama has done is snooping on all America with the NSA spying program? Do you feel Jeb Bush is qualified to be president? Listen to clip 3 again in case you were not listening, in case you listen to talk shows that tell you that Jeb Bush is the best thing since George Bush. Listen to clip 3 again.
I would say the best part of the Obama administration would be his continuance of the protections of the homeland using, the big metadata programs, the NSA being enhanced, advancing this, even though he never defends it, even though he never openly admits it, there has been a continuation of a very important service, which is the first obligation, I think, of our national government is to keep us safe.
Now, Hitler would have said it another way. He would have said it by screaming and yelling, and they would have played the Horst Wessel song behind him. But it would have been the same words of Hitler, saying that we're going to spy on all of you Germans to make sure that the communists and the Jews don't undermine the state. But when it comes from a nice American Christian, someone with a friendly, deep voice, with a fairly friendly name named Bush, why you moronic idiots called Republicans think it's just fine. Well, let me tell you something. Hitler is Hitler, no matter what form it comes in. Meanwhile, Christian churches are being burned to the ground. Whole families are being raped and set on fire. Christians are being driven out of the Middle East. Yazidis are being driven out of the Middle East. And this lying double agent of ours, called the president, has the audacity to go on MSNBC and says, there's less war and less violence. I'm doing a great job.
I remind people that, there actually is probably less war and less violence around the world today than there might have been 30, 40 years ago. It doesn't make it any less painful, but things can get better. We just have to be vigilant, and we have to have strong partners.
I'm doing just a great job. Meanwhile, everyone who is in the military who knows better knows that he could have taken ISIS out within a week. But we're not doing that, are we? There's an actual calculation of how many impotent actions he has engaged the military in against ISIS, which is why they continue to rampage on their blitzkrieg. Do you understand that? You know what's interesting to me is that there's an article on CNN by a man who copied my line, Aaron David Miller. He says, how Iran outfoxes the U.S., but he's actually ripping off one of my lines. He says, we're playing checkers on the Middle East game board, and Tehran's playing three-dimensional chess. How many times have you heard Michael Savage say that over the last few years? At least a dozen times. Is that correct? They're playing chess, and we have people who are also playing chess. This is where they got it wrong. Obama's not playing checkers against their chess. He's playing chess against the American people. Obama's playing three-dimensional chess against the American people and checkers against Iran. How do you feel about Jeb Bush sticking up for the spying on all Americans? How could you accept that? How could you accept a man saying that and claiming he's a Republican candidate? I want to shift, though, to something entirely different. A plane bound for Amman, Jordan, goes down in the Caspian Sea. The crash yields no survivors except the hijacker. And a cask containing an agent of unprecedented destructive potential is missing from the plane wreckage. A carefully plotted terrorist attack has been put into motion, and the resulting chaos might be enough to push America toward another costly war. Countdown to Mecca. It's a gripping page-turner. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust to protect my wealth.
I am going to still go to Kenya. Look, it's a heartbreaking situation. There's a lot of tumult and chaos around the world right now. And part of our goal as the world's leading superpower is to work with partner countries to try to resolve conflicts, to be ruthless in going after terrorism. But we're not going to do that by ourselves, and we're not going to do it just by deploying more Marines in every country that has these problems.
If we had this man in office in 1939, you would be speaking German or you would be a lampshade. Everything the man says is a lie and a cover-up. Now, I don't want to turn the whole show into Obama bashing because it's too easy to do. And we are at 1 minute to midnight, or is it 1 second to midnight, with the penetration and the infiltration that we all could see plainly in front of our eyes. Speaking to the issue of the blitzkrieg that ISIS is conducting, almost uninterrupted by Obama, there's a great article in there entitled Waging JV War by Michael Fumento in today's New York Post, and it's worth reading. You see, he fought there, and here's what he wrote. As Iraqis fight to repel ISIS in Ramadi, the O administration is deeming this vital city expendable. In so doing, the White House shows it understands nothing about the value of Ramadi or even its own capacity to defend it. There's no better example of U.S. incompetence in dealing with these mad jihadis. Why isn't this key western Iraqi city, the capital of Anbar province, high on our priority list? According to Joint Chiefs of Staff Martin Dempsey, It's because President O would rather place the emphasis on defending an Anbar refinery to protect the oil supplies, as if we couldn't do both and then some. For the past 8 months, the administration has settled for little more than jabs when it could have landed flurries of punishing roundhouse blows. According to the latest 24-hour Defense Department report, U.S. forces launched just 36 airstrikes against ISIS in both Iraq and Syria. That's actually much more than normal, but it nevertheless is the equivalent of fighter bombers from the offshore U.S. carrier making just one sortie a day, though each of these planes can fly several daily. And that doesn't count the vast numbers of ground-based F-16s, F-15s, F-22s, A-10s, B-1 heavy bombers, helicopters, and Reaper and Predator drones we have in the area, or the aircraft of 11 other coalition nations. The day before, there were only 13 airstrikes. Fewer than a single Reaper can launch on one mission. Cruise missiles are also in theater. Plus B-52 and B-2 bombers can strike from anywhere in the world. Yet with this massive armada and assets on the ground to help identify targets, the administration seems unable to strike more than a handful of targets a day. A machine gun here, a truck there. There's been little effort to translate success in pinpoint assassination efforts, such as that which last month may have temporarily knocked ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi out of the fight into a war-fighting effort. Which brings us back to Ramadi, a city that's no big deal, says Dempsey. Quote, it has no symbolic meaning. That's an incredible statement, he writes. The city's meaning is both symbolic and strategic. During the Second Iraq War, Al-Qaeda in Iraq chose the city as its headquarters, and it became the most fiercely contested area in the country. That's why the author spent 2 of his 3 Iraq embeds there. It's why SEAL Team 3 of American Sniper fame was stationed there during my embeds and yet again later. That includes the first SEAL killed in Iraq, Michael Mansour, who won the Medal of Honor for diving on a grenade. Many experts consider the Battle of Ramadi and the Anbar awakening engineered by Captain Travis Patrick Quinn the actual turning point of the war. Patrick Quinn, who was killed in Ramadi along with my Marine Public Affairs handler, got the Sunni chieftains to join the Americans and Iraqi security forces to defeat Al-Qaeda. Now those same chieftains and their brave men are being left to their own devices. Dempsey says that when we get around to it, we'll just take Ramadi back. Sure, like Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit was retaken, 1 bloody meter at a time, as each trash bag, dirt mound, and corner hit an IED, and after untold numbers of the defenders were horribly murdered. In Ramadi, anybody who fought alongside us is slated for torture and death. Humanity aside, what kind of a signal are we sending potential allies? Michael Fumento concludes, Obama is keeping America's arms tied behind its back. We're no sleeping giant. We're downright comatose. I would like to say thank you to Michael Fumento, but I don't think you have it completely right. We're not comatose. We have a president who's working for the other team. That's my opinion.
Savage.